She's not sleeping. She's fading. The river doesn't rush, it holds her gently, like someone afraid to let go. This painting looks peaceful, but behind its beauty lies one of the most tragic stories in art history. A woman sinking slowly into the water, captured forever in paint. This is Ophelia, painted between 1851 and 52 by John Everett Millais, one of the founders of the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. The painting is considered to be one of the great masterpieces of the Pre-Raphaelite style. It was inspired by Shakespeare's play Hamlet, where Ophelia, broken by grief and madness, drowns in a river. In Hamlet, Ophelia loses everything that anchors her to the world. Her father, Polonius, is killed by Hamlet himself, the man she loves but who slowly turns cold and cruel toward her. Caught between loyalty to her family and love for Hamlet. Overwhelmed by sorrow, she begins to lose touch with reality. In the play, we never see her death, only hear that she drowned. But Millais wanted to paint the moment Shakespeare left untold, the fragile silence between life and death, where heartbreak becomes stillness. Millais decided to paint the unseen moment, the fragile second between life and death. We see Ophelia drifting in the stream, her body half surrendered to the water. The weight of her dress makes the fabric bloom and sink at once, both floating and pulling her gently downward. Her open hands rest in quiet surrender, as if she's no longer fighting fate, only accepting it. All around her, the scene comes alive with color, summer flowers and wild plants that tell her story better than words ever could. Some come straight from Shakespeare's lines, others chosen for what they mean, tiny symbols of the life and love she's leaving behind. The poppy, deep red and fragile, lies close to her heart. It speaks of death and eternal sleep, not in a cry of tragedy, but in a sigh, soft and almost peaceful. Nearby, small white daisies float by her hands, the last trace of her lost innocence, like the childhood she'll never return to. The violets, faded and scattered across the water, whisper of young love and faithfulness, love that never had a chance to bloom. Around her, the willows bend low in mourning, and nettles twist by the riverbank, even nature seems to grieve with her. In this painting, every petal, every leaf, feels alive, carrying both her beauty and her pain. Together, they turn her death into something heartbreakingly beautiful. Even the willows, the nettles, the forget-me-nots, they all hold grief in their petals. None of it is random. It's a secret language of loss and memory, written gently across the water. When it comes to visualizing Ophelia herself, to capture his vision, Millais didn't just imagine Ophelia, he recreated her world. He asked a young artist named Elizabeth Siddal to lie in a bathtub filled with water inside his London studio, wearing a shimmering antique silver dress he had chosen just for her. By then, the seasons had turned. Millais had spent the warm spring and summer painting the riverbank outside, every blade of grass, every ripple of water. Now it was winter, cold, gray, and silent, and Elizabeth became the soul of the painting. To keep the water warm, Millais placed oil lamps beneath the tub. But one day, lost in his painting, he didn't notice when the flames went out. The water turned cold, painfully cold, yet Elizabeth said nothing. She stayed still, floating in silence, her body trembling beneath the chill. Like Ophelia, she did not fight or cry out. She simply let the water take her, sinking into quiet endurance. Later, she fell ill, the price of her devotion, as if art and life had blurred for a moment, and she too had drowned, not in water, but in her own stillness. She wasn't just a model, she was a talented painter and poet, later married Dante Gabriel Rossetti, one of Millais' pre-Raphaelite peers. When Ophelia was first exhibited, critics were stunned. The colors were brighter than life itself, the realism almost photographic. Every leaf, every reflection painted with obsessive precision. It wasn't just realism, it was emotion made visible. Ophelia is often seen as fragile, but Millais painted her strength, the calm surrender of someone who has loved too deeply. A moment between breath and silence, beauty and tragedy. Today, Ophelia hangs in Tate Britain, London, her calm face still floating in that eternal river. More than 170 years later, people stand before her in silence, as if listening for the sound of the water that once took her away. So, what do you think? Was Millais honoring Ophelia, or romanticizing her suffering?